A millionaire paid a woman $1 million to pretend to be his girlfriend for just 3 minutes. Sounds insane, right? But what started as a fake act would soon become the most real thing either of them had ever felt. You're about to see how one lie, born out of panic, turned two strangers into something neither could walk away from. The night glittered with luxury. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the ballroom, golden lights bouncing off designer gowns and expensive laughter. Inside, everyone seemed happy, everyone except him. Ethan Blake, 31, billionaire heir to Blake Enterprises, the kind of man every tabloid loved to chase. He had money, looks, power, and a serious problem. He was trapped. At the front of the ballroom, his mother, Eleanor Blake, was making an announcement. "Tonight," she said with a glowing smile, "we celebrate not just family, but future. My son Ethan and the lovely Vanessa shall soon be wed." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but Ethan froze. His chest tightened, because this was not his idea of a future. Vanessa, glamorous, cold, and ambitious, smiled like victory itself. She leaned close and whispered, "Smile, darling. You don't want to ruin Mother's surprise, do you?" Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd told his mother 100 times he didn't want this marriage, that it was nothing but a merger in disguise. But Eleanor never listened. In her eyes, family meant business, and tonight he was the company she was selling. He needed a way out, fast. He turned, scanning the room, desperate for any excuse, any distraction. And that's when he saw her. A young woman standing awkwardly near the back, holding a tray of champagne flutes. Her name tag read Lily. She didn't belong in that glittering world. Her uniform was simple, her eyes tired but kind. While the guests floated in confidence and arrogance, Lily stood small, invisible, a silent witness to everyone else's drama. But there was something about her, something real. Their eyes met for a split second, and in that moment Ethan knew. She was his way out. He walked straight toward her. Lily blinked, startled, nearly dropping the tray. "Sir, would you like a drink?" He lowered his voice. "No, I need your help." My help?" "Yes, I'll pay you $1 million. The tray almost slipped from her hands. "What?" He leaned closer. "Pretend to be my girlfriend. For 3 minutes, that's all." Lily laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" "Do I look like I'm joking?" His tone was steady, urgent, desperate. She stared at him. The tuxedo, the crowd, the flashing lights. Everything about him screamed trouble. But $1 million? Her rent was overdue. Her mother's hospital bills were piling up. She'd been working double shifts just to stay afloat. 3 minutes. $1 million. "What do I have to do?" she finally whispered. Ethan smiled slightly, the first real smile of the night. "Just follow my lead." Moments later, gasps filled the ballroom. Ethan stormed up to the stage, grabbed the microphone from the host, and announced, "I'm sorry, Mother, but there's been a mistake." The crowd fell silent. Eleanor blinked, confused. "Ethan, what are you?" He gestured toward Lily, who was standing near the edge of the room, wide-eyed. "This," he said, voice firm, "is my girlfriend." Whispers rippled through the guests like wildfire. Vanessa's face drained of color. "You're joking!" Ethan smiled coolly. "I never joke about the woman I love." The words hit Lily like thunder. She forced a smile, trying not to panic as dozens of eyes burned into her. Her heart pounded as Ethan reached for her hand and pulled her closer. He says he never jokes about the woman he loves. He says the reason he can't marry anyone else is because he's already in love. The shock and scandal exploded from the audience. Eleanor's expression twisted with rage. Vanessa's hand trembled as she slammed her glass on the table. And Lily, She just stood there, trying not to faint. Ethan leaned close, whispering in her ear, "Just smile. 3 minutes, remember?" She nodded weakly. "You're insane." "Probably." The next few minutes were chaos. Reporters whispered, guests pointed, and Ethan, calm as ever, played his role to perfection. He wrapped an arm around Lily's waist, and though it was supposed to be pretend, the moment his skin touched hers, something shifted. A strange warmth spread through him, something he hadn't felt in years. Lily, flustered but determined, tried to play along. She smiled, answered politely, even let him hold her close. Her heart raced, not entirely from fear. After all, when a man like Ethan Blake looks at you like you're the only one in the room, it's hard to remember it's just an act. When the 3 minutes were finally up, Ethan gently guided her out of the ballroom. They slipped into a quiet hallway, away from the noise and flashes. Lily exhaled shakily. Was that really necessary?" He turned to her, running a hand through his hair. "You have no idea how necessary." "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "I hope your little stunt was worth it." He looked at her, really looked at her. This girl had just risked her job, her reputation, everything for a stranger. "I'll make sure you get what I promised," he said quietly. She frowned. "You don't have to." But he interrupted, his voice low and sincere. "No, I do. You just saved me." Lily blinked. "From what? A wedding?" He gave a small, humorless laugh. "From a lifetime of pretending." There was something in his tone, maybe loneliness, maybe pain, that made her chest tighten. For a moment they just stood there, a billionaire and a waitress, worlds apart, connected by a ridiculous lie that somehow felt too real. Then, before either could say more, Ethan's mother appeared at the end of the hall. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. "Ethan, a word." He sighed. "Here we go." Lily started to step away, but he caught her hand. "Stay." Eleanor's eyes darted to their joined hands. Her smile was cold enough to freeze fire. "So," she said smoothly, "this is the woman who just humiliated our family in front of 200 guests." Lily opened her mouth to apologize, but Ethan cut in. "She didn't do anything wrong. I did." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "You've lost your mind! That waitress?" Lily's face flushed. Ethan's voice hardened. "Her name is Lily." Eleanor glared at him, then at Lily. "This little performance of yours, whatever game you think you're playing, it ends tonight." And with that she turned and walked away. Lily stood frozen, whispering, "Maybe I should go." But Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." That night, everything changed. A deal that was supposed to last 3 minutes had just begun a story neither of them could control. Because for Ethan, Lily wasn't just an escape anymore. She was the first real thing in his life full of lies. And for Lily, the man who promised her $1 million had just dragged her into a world where money couldn't buy what was coming next. Danger, heartbreak, and something dangerously close to love.
The night after the wedding, chaos felt like a storm that refused to die. Inside the Blake mansion, tension hung heavier than the crystal chandeliers. The once proud home, filled with old money and quiet arrogance, now pulsed with whispers of scandal. In one wing of the mansion, Ethan sat alone in his study. Drink in hand, tie loosened, staring at nothing. Every news channel was playing the same clip. Billionaire heir Ethan Blake shocks guests by announcing mystery girlfriend during engagement party. He sighed, rubbing his temple. The fallout had begun. His phone buzzed. Vanessa. He didn't pick up. Then it rang again. Mother. He silenced it. The world was furious, and he didn't care. Except for one person. Lily. The woman who'd stood beside him, trembling but brave, taking the fall for his impulsive escape. He couldn't get the look on her face out of his mind, that mix of confusion, fear, and something softer he couldn't name. Meanwhile, across town, Lily sat on her narrow bed in her tiny apartment. The city outside buzzed with distant traffic, but inside it was silent, except for her phone, which wouldn't stop vibrating. Her friend Mia was calling again. "Lily, tell me you didn't actually do that." Mia's voice blared through the phone. I didn't plan to," she said weakly. "You pretended to be a billionaire's girlfriend in front of everyone? Do you realize what that looks like?" "Yes," Lily whispered, "and I also realize I might be fired tomorrow." Mia groaned. "You think? Girl, this is going viral." Lily winced. "Please tell me it's not. It's everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, news blogs. Everyone's talking about the mystery maid." Lily buried her face in her hands. Perfect. Just perfect. She wanted to disappear, not trend. The next morning, her fears were confirmed. When she arrived at the catering company, the manager called her into the office. His tone was sharp, his expression colder than usual. "Lily, what on earth were you thinking?" "I didn't mean to cause trouble, Mr. Dawson. You embarrassed a client, a Blake. We've lost their contract." Her chest tightened. Please, you're fired." And just like that, her only source of income was gone. She walked out in silence, clutching her bag. One bad decision, one ridiculous night, and her life had unraveled. As she stepped into the cold morning air, she thought bitterly, 3 minutes for $1 million? More like 3 minutes for nothing. Except that wasn't entirely true, because that night, she had seen something in Ethan's eyes. Something broken. Something real. That evening, just as she was about to collapse into bed, there was a knock on her door. She opened it and nearly dropped her tea. Ethan Blake stood there. Black suit, sleeves rolled up, no cameras, no bodyguards, just him. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. Lily blinked. "Are you insane? Do you want the paparazzi to camp outside my building?" He gave a half smile. "They already are. I had my driver circle twice." She sighed, stepping aside. "You have exactly 5 minutes." He walked in, looking out of place in her small, cluttered apartment, the kind with peeling wallpaper and mismatched furniture. She crossed her arms. "So, to what do I owe this disaster?" He looked genuinely remorseful. "I came to apologize." Lily laughed bitterly. "Apologize? For what? Ruining my job, my name, and probably my life?" He didn't argue. He simply reached into his jacket, pulled out a check, and placed it on the table. "Here, $1 million, like I promised." Lily froze. There it was, the exact figure she thought he'd never remember. Her voice dropped. "You were serious?" He always keeps his word. She stared at the check, heart pounding. It could change everything. Her mother's treatment, her debts, her future. But it also felt wrong. She pushed it back to him. "I can't take this." Ethan frowned. "Why not?" "Because I didn't earn it. I pretended for 3 minutes." He met her gaze. "You earned it the moment you saved me from that nightmare. You didn't just pretend, Lily. You gave me a reason to fight back." She hesitated, searching his face for any trace of arrogance, but there was none. Only honesty. Finally, she said softly, "You really hate your world that much?" Ethan exhaled, leaning against the wall. It's not the world I hate, it's what it's turned me into. They talked for hours about his mother's obsession with image, about his father's death and the empire he'd been forced to inherit, about her struggles, her mother's illness, her dreams she'd buried under bills. Two strangers, one with everything, one with nothing, but both lonely in ways money could never fix. At some point, Lily realized it wasn't pity she felt anymore, it was connection. Still, when Ethan stood to leave, she said firmly, "Don't come here again. Our worlds don't mix." He gave a sad smile. Maybe they should. And before she could reply, he was gone. The next few days blurred into chaos. Headlines screamed, "Ethan Blake's mystery girlfriend revealed!" Paparazzi camped outside Lily's building, snapping photos every time she stepped out. She started hiding indoors, curtains drawn. Mia brought groceries. Her mother, recovering in a small clinic, had no idea what her daughter was caught in. Then, one morning, a black car pulled up outside. Ethan's driver handed her an envelope. Inside was a note. "I need you to play the part one more time, just for the press. Please, Ethan." She stared at it, heart thudding. She wanted to tear it up, but something inside whispered, maybe this time she could control the story. Later that afternoon, she found herself walking into the same mansion where it all began. The staff stared as she passed, some whispered, but this time she didn't shrink. Ethan was waiting in the study. When he saw her, relief softened his face. "You came." "Don't thank me yet," she said flatly. "I'm only here because I don't want your PR team painting me as a gold digger." He smiled faintly. Fair enough. They rehearsed what they'd tell the press, that they'd been secretly dating for months, that the wedding crash was a misunderstanding. Lily hated every second of it. But when Ethan looked at her, not as a prop, not as an employee, but as someone he actually saw, she felt something shift again. When the reporters arrived, Lily played her part flawlessly. Hand in hand with Ethan, smiling politely, she answered questions with grace. And for a brief moment, she almost forgot it was all fake. After the chaos died down, Ethan walked her to the car. "You were amazing," he said. "I'm a good actress," she replied with a wry smile. He looked at her for a long moment. "You know, I don't think I've laughed like this in years." Something in his voice made her heart flutter, just a little. She turned to leave. "Good night, Ethan." But before she could walk away, he said quietly, "Lily, this doesn't have to be pretend anymore." She froze. For a second, she thought she misheard him. "What?" He stepped closer, eyes sincere. "I don't know what this is yet, but it's real, at least for me." Lily's heart caught. Her heart wanted to believe him, but her head screamed, "Don't." She forced a shaky smile. "Good night, Mr. Blake," and she walked away, leaving him standing there under the mansion lights. That night, Ethan realized something terrifying. He had everything he had ever wanted, except the one thing he couldn't buy. And Lily? She lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering why her heart ached for the man who had turned her life upside down. The deal was over. The lie was done. But somehow, it felt like everything had just begun.
Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Blake mansion, lighting up the chaos of newspapers, headlines, and unanswered calls. Ethan Blake's secret romance, mystery maid, or million-dollar mistake. Inside the scandal that rocked high society. Every paper, every blog, every post had his name and hers. Ethan skimmed the headlines with a quiet sigh. His plan to escape one fake relationship had landed him in another. But this time, it didn't feel fake anymore. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily, her courage, her kindness, the way she spoke her mind, even when terrified. There was something disarmingly real about her, something he'd never found in anyone else. He wanted to see her again, but he also knew that every step closer would drag her deeper into his world, a world that chewed up good people and spat them out. Across town, Lily was doing her best to disappear. She'd moved her mother to a new care facility under a different name to avoid the press. Her phone was off most of the time, but sometimes late at night, she'd catch herself scrolling through old articles about Ethan. Photos of him at galas, with celebrities, with Vanessa. She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care. But when she saw one photo of Ethan smiling next to another woman at a charity event, something twisted inside her chest. Jealousy. It shouldn't have been there, but it was. A few days later, there was another knock on her door. Lily hesitated, then opened it, half expecting more reporters. Instead, it was Ethan's assistant, a neatly dressed woman named Claire. "Miss Lily, Mr. Blake requests your presence this evening at a charity dinner." Lily frowned. Another fake date? Claire smiled faintly, more like damage control. Lily sighed. Of course. That evening, she found herself once again in a black car heading toward luxury. She wore a simple emerald dress Ethan had sent. Elegant, understated, but somehow perfect. Her heart pounded the entire way. When she arrived, the flash of cameras blinded her. Reporters shouted questions. Photographers leaned over barriers. But then Ethan appeared, stepping out beside her, calm, confident, his hand reaching for hers. "Ready?" he whispered. "Not even close," she muttered. He smiled, "Just pretend." But when his fingers laced through hers, the warmth didn't feel pretend at all. Inside the grand ballroom, the whispers started instantly. "Is that her? The maid? She's actually beautiful." Ethan ignored them all. He guided Lily to their table, keeping her close, protective, almost possessive. Vanessa was there too, of course, in a crimson gown that screamed power. She walked over, smile sharp as glass. "Well, well, the famous Lily. Quite the upgrade from serving drinks." Lily forced a polite smile. "And you must be the woman who almost got married to a man who didn't want you." Ethan nearly choked on his wine. Vanessa's smile vanished. "Careful, sweetheart. You don't belong in this world." "Then maybe your world needs fixing," Lily replied softly. The table went silent, and for the first time, Vanessa walked away without another word. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Lily smirked. Smart choice. As the evening went on, something shifted between them. When the band played slow music, Ethan offered his hand. "Dance with me." Lily hesitated. "Ethan, people are staring." "Let them." He guided her to the dance floor, and as the soft melody wrapped around them, the world seemed to fade. For a few minutes, there were no lies, no headlines, just the quiet rhythm of two people who shouldn't have met, yet somehow fit perfectly. She looked up at him. "Why are you really doing all this?" He met her eyes. "Because for the first time in my life, I want something that isn't about money or power. I want you." Her breath caught. "Ethan." But before she could respond, cameras flashed, a dozen of them. Someone had been recording. Their private moment was now public. The next morning, the internet exploded. Ethan Blake and Mystery Girl's romantic dance. Is this the real deal? The photo of them dancing, her head resting on his chest, his hand at his waist, was everywhere. The world had decided they were a couple. And not everyone was happy about it. Eleanor Blake called her son in fury. "Have you completely lost control? That girl is ruining our family's reputation." He stood firm. "No, mother, she's the only honest thing in it." Her mother's voice turned cold. "If you continue this, you'll lose everything your father built." "Then maybe it's time I stop living for what he built." He hung up. Meanwhile, Lily's life was spiraling again. Paparazzi were outside her apartment 24/7. Reporters chased her down the street. Her mother's clinic had to move her again because of the unwanted attention. She called Ethan, her voice trembling. "This has to stop. I can't live like this." "I'll protect you," he said softly. "I promise." "You can't protect me from the world you live in, Ethan," she cried. "You belong there. I don't." He was silent for a moment. Then quietly he said, "Then I'll leave that world for you." Lily froze. "Don't say things you don't mean." But Ethan did mean it, and that terrified her even more. That evening she found an envelope slid under her door. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "Meet me where it all started." The Blake Mansion. She told herself not to go, but her heart didn't listen. Under the glow of the chandeliers, Ethan was waiting. No cameras, no reporters, no pretense. When she entered, he smiled softly. "You came." "I shouldn't have," she said quietly. "This is madness." "Maybe," he admitted, "but madness is the only thing that's felt real in a long time." She stared at him, at the man who once offered her $1 million for 3 minutes, now standing before her, offering something money could never buy. "Ethan," she whispered, "you can't fix what's broken inside you with me." "Maybe not, but you made me want to try." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then slowly he reached for her hand. "Stay, just tonight." Her heart pounded. "And tomorrow?" He smiled faintly. "We'll figure that out when it comes." And this time she didn't pull away. Outside, the city glittered, oblivious to the two souls inside that mansion, tangled in something they could no longer call fake. For Lily, it was dangerous. For Ethan, it was redemption. And for both, it was the beginning of something that could destroy them or save them completely.
Morning light crept through the mansion's tall windows, brushing across Ethan's face. He opened his eyes to find Lily asleep beside him on the couch, her head resting lightly on his shoulder, her hand still clasped in his. For a moment, he didn't move. He just watched her breathe. Peaceful, unaware of the storm waiting outside those doors. Then his phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer. "Vanessa has filed a lawsuit, breach of contract, public defamation." Ethan exhaled sharply. Of course she did. Lily stirred. "Everything okay?" He hesitated, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just business." But she could tell. The shadows under his calm expression said otherwise. Later that morning, the mansion staff hurried about, whispering. News cameras were already parked outside the gates. The scandal had evolved again, and this time, Vanessa wasn't holding back. She had gone on national television, claiming Ethan had paid Lily to be his fake girlfriend to get revenge. And suddenly, the world turned cruel. Social media exploded. #GoldDiggerLily trended. Comment sections filled with venom. She was a maid. Of course she did it for money. She's ruining his life. Everywhere Lily looked, there was hate. She tried to stay strong, but late that night, sitting in the empty kitchen, scrolling through the cruel headlines, she broke. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, "This was all pretend. I should have known better." Ethan found her there, quiet, shaken. He walked over, gently taking the phone from her trembling hands. "Don't read that garbage." Her voice cracked. "They're not wrong, Ethan. I was paid to pretend." He sat beside her. "And you didn't take that money for greed. You did it to save your mother. That doesn't matter to them. It matters to me." She looked up at him, eyes red but defiant. "You think your name can protect me from this? You can't buy respect, Ethan, not for people like me." He fell silent. because deep down, he knew she was right. The next day, Ethan called a press conference. Cameras flashed as he walked up to the podium, the weight of 1,000 stares pressing on him. "I want to address the lies," he began. "Yes, I hired Lily, but not for the reasons you think." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "She helped me escape an engagement built on deceit. She reminded me what honesty feels like. She's the best person I've ever met, and I won't let anyone destroy her for it." The reporters shouted questions, but Ethan didn't stay. He walked off, straight back to the car waiting for him, where Lily sat in shock. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I did." But the storm wasn't over. Vanessa wasn't done. That evening, she arrived uninvited at Ethan's home, the same mansion where it all began. Her tone was ice. "You think you can destroy me and walk away?" Ethan faced her calmly. "I didn't destroy you, Vanessa. You destroyed yourself." She laughed coldly. "Then maybe I'll return the favor. You know that investment deal your father's company is closing tomorrow? I own 30% of it. One call, and it all vanishes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You'd ruin your own name for revenge?" "For you?" she said bitterly. "Absolutely." Then her eyes flicked toward Lily, who had stepped into the hallway, her presence quiet but firm. "You think you've won him? Trust me, sweetheart, he'll always choose his empire over you." Lily met her gaze steadily. "Then maybe you never really knew him." The next few days were chaos. Investors pulled out, stocks dropped. Ethan's board of directors demanded he end the scandal or lose his position. He sat in his father's old office that night, staring at the framed portrait on the wall, the legacy he was supposed to protect, the empire his mother still worshipped. He could fix it all with one choice: walk away from Lily, or he could finally live for himself and risk losing everything. Meanwhile, Lily packed her things quietly. She couldn't let him lose his life's work because of her. When Ethan came home, the house felt hollow. Her suitcase was by the door. "What are you doing?" he asked. She turned, forcing a small smile. "Leaving before I cost you everything." "You think I care about the money?" "You should," she said softly, "because I don't belong in your world, Ethan. I never did." He stepped closer. "Then I'll build a new world." Her voice trembled. "Don't make promises you'll regret." He reached out, gently touching her cheek. "I've made plenty of mistakes, Lily. Loving you won't be one of them." Tears filled her eyes, but she still stepped back. "Then prove it," she whispered. And with that, she was gone. Days passed. The media frenzy moved on to something new, but the silence she left behind was unbearable. Ethan tried to focus on work, meetings, deals, but his heart wasn't in it. Every place in that mansion echoed with her laughter, the one sound he couldn't forget. Until one night, he found the envelope she had left on the table. Inside, a note. "If you ever learn to live without pretending, you'll know where to find me." No address, no name, just a clue. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Blake, the man who had everything, realized he had no idea what he truly wanted. Was it love, or the lie he'd built his life around? He looked out at the city lights, whispering to himself, "I'm done pretending." And that decision would change everything.
The mansion felt empty without her. Not silent, empty. Every echo of her laughter was gone. Every corner where her presence once lingered now felt cold, lifeless. For days, Ethan moved like a ghost, attending meetings, signing papers, nodding through conversations he couldn't remember. His assistant brought in reports, investors called for updates, his phone never stopped ringing,
But Ethan Blake, the man everyone believed unshakable, had never felt so hollow. The scandal had cost him dearly. Vanessa followed through with her threats, pulling her investments from his company. The stock plunged, partners walked away, and when the board held their emergency meeting, their words were sharp, rehearsed, merciless. Ethan, the media fallout is damaging the brand. We suggest you step down for a while, for the company's sake. He looked around the table, at the people who had once cheered his every move. Now their eyes avoided his. Fine, Ethan said, finally. If that's what it takes to save it, I'll resign. He stood, walked out of the boardroom, and left behind the empire his father had built and he had spent a lifetime protecting. Outside, reporters swarmed, flashing cameras in his face. "Mr. Blake, are you stepping down because of the fake girlfriend scandal? Did you really fall in love with your maid?" He didn't answer, because for the first time, he didn't care what the world thought. Weeks passed. No suits, no chauffeurs, no headlines. Ethan disappeared from the city, driving until the skyscrapers turned into endless countryside. He ended up in a quiet coastal town, the kind of place where no one knew his name. He rented a small cottage near the shore and began doing something he hadn't done in years: breathing. Mornings were spent watching the waves crash against the rocks, afternoons helping an old fisherman mend nets, just for conversation. Nights he'd sit by the sea, rereading Lily's note. "If you ever learn to live without pretending." The words haunted him. He finally understood what she meant. He had lived a life built on performance, fake smiles, fake friends, fake love. And now that it was all gone, what remained was peace and the ache of missing her. One evening, Ethan went into town for groceries. A woman at the small cafe recognized him, not as Ethan Blake, billionaire, but from something else. "Wait, weren't you the guy who helped out at the children's shelter last week?" she asked with a smile. He blinked. "Children's shelter?" "Yeah, there's a volunteer center outside town. One of the women there, Lily, I think her name is, she's been raising funds for it." His heart stopped. Lily. Without a word, he grabbed his coat and left the cafe, driving straight toward the old building by the edge of town. He found her there, painting a wall with soft pastel colors, her hair tied messily, streaks of paint on her cheek. She turned when she heard footsteps. For a moment, they both froze. It was like time folded back to the day they first met, two strangers pretending to be something they weren't. "Lily," he whispered. "Finally you found me when I stopped pretending. Guess I'm here." Lily dropped the paintbrush. "Ethan, you shouldn't have come." "Why?" "Because this is my life now. Simple, real, no lies." "I'm not here to take it from you. I'm here to earn it." Her eyes softened, but her voice trembled. "You gave up everything. For what?" "For the only truth I've ever known." That night, they sat outside under the stars. No chandeliers, no champagne, just the quiet rhythm of waves. Ethan finally spoke the words he had kept buried for months. "I used to think money could buy anything. Happiness, loyalty, even love. But when you left, I realized something. Money can't fill silence. It can't replace laughter. It can't hold your hand when you're lost." Lily's eyes glistened. He continued, "I used to think you were never part of my plan. You were the interruption I needed, the moment everything false came crashing down." She tried to smile, but tears betrayed her. Ethan, I'm not the same woman you met. I've seen what your world does to people. It destroys them. Then we'll build something better, he said quietly, together. For the first time, she didn't look away, and the air between them changed, fragile, hopeful, real. But peace never lasts long. One evening, while helping at the shelter, a car pulled up, a black luxury sedan, one Ethan knew too well. His mother stepped out, immaculate as always, her expression sharp. Ethan, we need to talk. Inside, her words cut deep. You've thrown away your legacy for her? Do you know what your father would think? Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd think I finally became my own man. Her mother turned to Lily. Do you think this will last? Do you think love will feed him when the world forgets his name? Lily's hands shook, but her voice was steady. Maybe not, but at least it's honest. Mrs. Blake's eyes flashed with anger. You'll regret this. I already regretted living a lie, Ethan replied quietly. I won't regret living the truth. And with that, he walked her to the door, closing it, gently, firmly, for good. That night, Lily sat beside Ethan on the porch, the sound of waves soothing the silence between them. You really left it all, she said softly. He smiled. Maybe it wasn't all, after all. Maybe it was just noise. She looked at him for a long moment. So what now? He pointed toward the shelter. We finish painting, then we open it, for kids who never had a chance to pretend or to dream. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. And what about us? He took her hand gently. We'll stop pretending there too. Months passed. The shelter opened under the name The Haven Project. Ethan funded it quietly. No press, no headlines. Just purpose. Lily ran the day-to-day operations while Ethan fixed roofs, taught kids how to read, and learned how to live without walls around his heart. And one evening, as the sunset bathed the sea in gold, he turned to her and said, You told me 3 minutes could change everything. You were right. She smiled. What about now? He took a deep breath. Now, I'm asking for forever. Tears welled in her eyes as he slipped a simple ring, no diamonds, no price tag, onto her finger. No pretending, no lies. Just love.
Months passed like a quiet dream. The sea breeze carried laughter from the children's shelter. Ethan and Lily built a simple, beautiful life, one painted not with luxury, but with peace. Every morning they worked side by side. Every evening they shared the sunset and soft moments that money could never buy. It was the life they had both secretly longed for. But peace, as Ethan would soon learn, has a price, and the past always finds its way home. It began on a rainy afternoon. The storm rolled in without warning, dark clouds smothering the horizon. Ethan was fixing a leaking window when a knock echoed through the small cottage. He opened the door and froze. Standing there was Ryan Keller, his former business partner, the man who once helped him build Blake Enterprises, and the same man who betrayed him during the scandal. "Ryan," he muttered, half in disbelief, "what are you doing here?" Ryan stepped in, dripping rain onto the floor. "You've been hard to find." That was the point. Ryan sighed, rubbing his face. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. I came to warn you." Ethan frowned. "Warn me about what?" "Vanessa," Ryan said grimly. "She's back." Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't heard that name in months, and yet it still carried weight. Ryan continued. She's working with new investors. They're planning to take over your company, completely erase your family's name from it. And she's telling everyone you're unstable, that you lost control after her. He didn't need to say Lily's name. Ethan's fists tightened. Why tell me this? Because I made a mistake, Ryan said. You didn't deserve what we did, and Vanessa won't stop. Not until she ruins everything tied to you, including her. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Leave Lily out of this. Ryan gave a helpless shrug. Then you better protect her. That night, Lily found Ethan sitting alone on the porch, staring at the dark waves. The storm had passed, but his expression was heavier than before. Ryan came by, she said softly. What did he want? He hesitated. He said Vanessa's coming after us. She's not done. Lily sat beside him. We can't run forever, Ethan. I'm not running, but I won't let her hurt you again. You can't fight every ghost, she whispered. Some things we have to let go. He turned to her, voice low but steady. I already let go of my past, but if she comes for our future, I'll fight. Days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just a wax seal. Gold, stamped with the Blake family crest. Ethan tore it open. Inside was a legal notice. Summons to appear in court regarding allegations of financial fraud during Blake Enterprises' transition. Vanessa had struck. She was claiming that Ethan had stolen company funds before stepping down. A lie, but one that could destroy everything he'd rebuilt. Lily watched the color drain from his face. She's framing you. He nodded, and if I don't fight back, she wins. Then go, Lily said quietly. Clear your name. Ethan hesitated. And leave you here alone? I'll be fine. But you need to face her. Not for revenge, for closure. Ethan returned to the city for the first time in nearly a year. The skyline rose before him. Familiar, yet foreign. The mansion he once owned now stood cold, empty, and for sale. At the courthouse, the flashes of cameras greeted him again, but this time, he didn't flinch. Inside, Vanessa sat at the opposite table, flawless as ever, with a smirk that hadn't aged a day. Ethan, she purred. I wondered how long it would take for you to crawl back. He ignored her. When the judge entered, the battle began. Vanessa's lawyers presented fabricated documents, doctored transfers, a web of lies spun so tightly it almost looked real. But Ethan came prepared, with evidence Ryan had secretly brought him, proof of her forged signatures and offshore accounts. When the truth unfolded, the courtroom gasped. The judge's final words rang clear. Case dismissed. Ms. Vanessa Stone, you are under investigation for fraud and perjury. Vanessa's face went pale. Ethan turned to her one last time. I'm done pretending, Vanessa. That includes pretending you ever had power over me. He walked out of that courthouse a free man. No empire, no fortune. Just peace. Reporters shouted questions, but he didn't look back. He had only one destination in mind. Home. When he arrived at the shelter, Lily was in the garden with the children, laughter ringing in the air. For a long moment, he just watched her. The woman who had saved him not once, but twice, from others and from himself. She turned, saw him standing there, and her face broke into the kind of smile that could heal anything. It's over, he said softly. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Then let's start living. In the weeks that followed, life felt lighter. Ethan and Lily poured their energy into expanding the Haven Project. Donations began to pour in, not from his name or wealth, but from people inspired by their story. Children found homes, families found hope, and the quiet coastal towns slowly became a beacon of second chances.
One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily turned to him. "You ever miss it?" she asked. "The old life?" Ethan smiled. "Sometimes, but then I remember that life gave me everything but meaning. This one gives me everything that matters." A few days later, he took her to the old pier where they had first confessed their love. He carried a small wooden box. "What's this?" Lily asked, curious. He opened it to reveal a bracelet, handcrafted, simple, engraved with 2 words, "No pretending." She laughed through tears. "You kept your promise." He fastened it around her wrist. "And I'll keep it every day for the rest of my life." They stood there as the tide rolled in, waves crashing against the shore, not to drown the past, but to wash it clean. Because love, they realized, wasn't about perfection or wealth. It was about truth, the kind that stays when everything else fades. A letter arrived the next morning. From Ryan. "Vanessa's been arrested. She won't be bothering anyone again. I'm starting over too. Thanks for showing me what that means." Ethan folded the letter with a quiet smile and handed it to Lily. "See? Even ghosts can find peace," she said. He nodded. "So can we." As the children ran across the sand, laughter echoing in the wind, Ethan whispered under his breath, "3 minutes changed my life, but the rest of it, that's for you." Lily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder as the sun broke through the clouds. And together, they watched the light return.
The night air was heavy with tension. The glittering chandeliers and classical music of the gala felt distant, like echoes of a world that no longer existed. Sophie stood frozen, her pulse racing as the truth hung in the air, raw, exposed, and unrelenting. "Yes," Ethan finally confessed, his voice trembling. "It's true. I paid you to be my girlfriend." The words sliced through her like a blade. All the laughter, the stolen glances, the warmth she had begun to believe was real, shattered in an instant. Sophie's lips quivered. Why? Why would you do that to me?" He took a deep breath, pain flooding his expression. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never meant to hurt you." "Then why?" she pressed, tears burning her eyes. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure breaking for the first time. "Because I needed someone real in a world full of lies." Sophie blinked in confusion. He continued, his voice heavy with regret. "After my father's death, I inherited everything, the company, the mansion, the money. But with that came vultures. Everyone wanted something. Investors, socialites, fake friends. I couldn't trust anyone." He paused, swallowing hard. "Then I met you. You didn't care about who I was. You were just you. Kind, honest, real. I thought if I offered you a deal, something clear and professional, you'd stay. I was wrong." Sophie took a step back, her tears finally falling. "So all of this was just a business transaction?" "No," his voice cracked. "At first, maybe, but then I fell for you. Hard." Sophie shook her head. "You can't buy love, Ethan. I know that now." His voice dropped, quiet but desperate. "You taught me that." The music from the ballroom faded into silence as the two stood facing each other. Two souls caught between love and betrayal. After a long pause, Sophie turned away. "I can't do this." Ethan reached out, but she pulled back, her voice trembling. "You had everything, Ethan. Money,
power, the world at your feet, and yet you thought you had to buy me? That's not love, that's control." He lowered his gaze. "You're right. I didn't understand what love was. Not until I met you. But now, it's too late." Sophie walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, each step echoing the sound of something breaking. His heart and hers. Days turned into weeks. Sophie quit her job at the mansion. She returned to her small apartment, her simple life, trying to rebuild what the deception had shattered. But at night, she couldn't stop thinking about him, the man who had lied to her, yet also looked at her as if she were the only truth in his world. Ethan, meanwhile, became a ghost of himself. He stopped attending meetings. The empire he once managed so meticulously began to crumble under the weight of his guilt. One night he sat alone in his study, staring at the unsigned documents on his desk, a contract he no longer needed. The deal was over. The money meant nothing. He whispered into the silence, "She was worth more than every dollar I ever made." Outside, rain fell softly against the glass, mirroring the ache in his chest. Weeks later, Sophie received a letter. No return address, just her name written in familiar handwriting. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. But this time, it wasn't payment. It was a donation receipt for $1 million made in her name to an orphanage she once volunteered at. Beneath it, a short note. "For the first time, I gave without expecting anything in return. You taught me that love isn't about deals, it's about giving freely. Ethan." Sophie's eyes welled up. She could almost hear his voice in those words, broken, sincere, full of remorse. For the first time in weeks, she smiled faintly through her tears. Maybe, she thought, people could change. Months later, fate stepped in once more. Sophie was volunteering at the orphanage when a familiar voice called her name. She turned, and there he was, Ethan, standing under the sunlight, looking humbler than she had ever seen him. No designer suit, no chauffeur, just him. He approached slowly, his eyes searching hers. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I came to thank you," he said softly. Sophie blinked. "For what?" "For showing me what love actually means, for breaking me in the best way possible." She exhaled shakily. "Ethan," he smiled gently, "you don't have to say anything. I know I don't deserve you. I just wanted to see you one last time, to tell you that I'm finally learning to live for something more than myself." There was a silence between them, the kind that spoke louder than words. Sophie finally said, "You've changed." He nodded. "I had to, because losing you was my greatest lesson." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The girl who had been hired to pretend, and the man who had learned to feel. The world around them faded, the laughter of children, the sunlight filtering through the trees, and in that quiet, something healed. That evening, as she walked home, she thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the heartbreak, the redemption. Love, she realized, wasn't a contract. It wasn't something you could earn, buy, or promise. It was something you had to become.
And though their paths might never cross again, she knew that somewhere out there, Ethan had become someone better, not because of wealth, but because of love.
Months had passed since that afternoon at the orphanage. Sophie had returned to her quiet life, working part-time, helping children, and rediscovering who she was before everything happened. The pain had softened, replaced by a quiet peace. But sometimes, when the night grew still and her mind wandered, she thought of him, the man who had once bought her time, but ended up buying his own redemption. Ethan Rant, the billionaire who lost everything, and in losing it, finally found his soul. One crisp autumn morning, Sophie received a letter. It wasn't handwritten this time. It came on official stationery, embossed with gold. Curious, she opened it. Inside was an invitation. You are cordially invited to the opening ceremony of the Grant Foundation for Hope, a charity dedicated to empowering orphans and underprivileged youth worldwide. We would be honored by your presence. And Ethan Grant. For a moment, Sophie just stared at it. Her heart beat faster. She hadn't seen him in nearly a year. Was she ready to face him again? After a long pause, she smiled faintly. Maybe it's time. The day of the ceremony arrived. The event hall was elegant but simple, filled not with millionaires or cameras, but with children, volunteers, and teachers. At the front stood Ethan, speaking not from a place of pride, but humility. He no longer looked like the man who once hid behind luxury and arrogance. His hair was slightly longer, his suit modest, but his eyes, they were softer, steadier. We live in a world where it's easy to throw money at problems. What truly changes lives is love, consistency, and compassion. This foundation isn't about wealth. It's about giving back what I almost lost, the belief that people matter more than profits. The crowd applauded warmly. Sophie stood near the back, her heart swelling. He had changed, not just on the outside, but where it truly counted. When their eyes finally met across the room, Ethan froze mid-sentence. For a brief second, time stopped. Sophie smiled softly. Ethan's lips curved almost in disbelief before he continued his speech. After the ceremony, Ethan found her in the courtyard, the same place where, months ago, he had once rehearsed his fake affection for her. Now there was nothing fake left, only truth. "Sophie," he said, his voice gentle but full of emotion. "Ethan," she replied with a smile. "You did it. The foundation is beautiful." He nodded, almost shyly. "I couldn't have done it without you." She laughed lightly. "Me? I didn't do anything." "Yes, you did," he said quietly. "You changed me. You taught me that love isn't something you buy. It's something you earn through honesty and heart." There was a pause, tender and filled with everything left unsaid. "I didn't invite you here to win you back," Ethan added. "I just wanted you to see the man I became, because of you." Sophie's eyes softened. "I see him, Ethan, and he's a good man." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was warm, full of healing. As they walked together through the garden, children laughed and played nearby, a living reminder of what their story had created. Ethan stopped near a small fountain and turned to her. "Do you ever think about us?" Sophie looked down, a faint smile on her lips. "Sometimes, mostly about what we learned." He nodded slowly. "I still think about you every day." She met his gaze, not with pain anymore, but peace. Maybe some stories don't need perfect endings to be beautiful. He smiled sadly, and maybe some do. A gentle breeze brushed past them, carrying the scent of roses and autumn leaves. Months passed again. The foundation grew, helping thousands of children.
Sophie continued volunteering, and Ethan often visited, always humble, always kind. Their friendship rekindled naturally, slow, genuine, built on truth instead of contracts. Until one evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Ethan appeared at the orphanage gate holding 2 cups of coffee. Sophie looked up from her work, smiling. "You again?" He chuckled. Couldn't stay away. They sat together on the bench, watching the children play. For a while, they said nothing, just listened to the laughter. Then softly, Ethan said, "You know, when I first met you, I thought I was hiring an actress, someone to play a part in my story. And now?" Sophie asked. He smiled, eyes warm. "Now I realize I was just a guest in yours." She laughed, shaking her head. "You always did know how to make an ending sound poetic." He leaned closer, his tone gentle. "Maybe it's not an ending." Sophie froze for a heartbeat, then smiled, her eyes glistening. "Maybe." Months later, a magazine article appeared titled, "The Billionaire Who Learned to Love Again." It spoke not of mansions or mergers, but of a man who gave up his fortune to build hope, and of a woman who reminded him what humanity truly means. But those who really knew the story, the children, the volunteers, the friends, knew it wasn't about wealth or power. It was about redemption, forgiveness, and the courage to love again after being broken. Because love isn't measured in money. It's measured in growth, in change, in what you give without expecting anything in return. As the sun set behind the foundation's courtyard, Sophie and Ethan stood side by side, watching the children run through the grass. And for the first time, they weren't pretending. Their smiles were real, their hearts finally free. A millionaire once paid her $1 million to pretend to love him. But in the end, it wasn't the money that changed their lives. It was the love they found when the lies fell away. Because sometimes, the richest hearts are the ones that learn how to give.